welcome back to my corner of the internet. My name is Fats. This is Tchai, my co-host. I missed having him in the back of my videos. When I had ordered this couch, I thought it was the washable fabric, and it's not. So he hasn't been allowed on the couch, but I just threw a blanket up there and I'll buy a couch cover and stop fighting that he is truly the person that runs this household. Now, to the video today. What we're talking about today is the books that didn't have a place. At the end of the month, I'm always so focused on the books that are going into my favorites, and I'm also planning out books that I think would be great for a certain talk, discussion, a Wednesday. The books that do not make it onto a deeper Wednesday, a deeper talk, a commentary, something, I still want to talk about them. So this is the day in which I do that. Now it is February, and in the month of February, I have read and I have completed 12 books. My favorites are going to take up a chunk, but today I'm going to be talking about 6 books that didn't quite make the cut. This doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad. It just means that of my personal preference, these books didn't make it onto my favorites. That's really all it means. It's pretty much a personal preference type of thing. We're going to start. I also have one DNF that I want to bring up today, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I'm working through these chronologically. Otherwise, there isn't really any deeper order to this. Let's hop into these books. The first book that I want to bring up was a book that I actually read in a vlog, but I'm bringing it up today just because I feel like sometimes within my vlogs, I am so immediate reaction and so live reaction that I don't quite tell you what's happening as clearly as I could. So I do like to bring them up again, just in case it was a bit too chaotic in the vlogs. I did listen to this one on audiobook, and this is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This story follows Vera Crowder, who is returning to her childhood home for the first time in 12 years. She had gotten a call from her mother, and her mom had said, "Hey, please come home. Her mom is extremely sick." And even though the relationship is a difficult one, in part due to the fact that Vera's father is a very infamous serial killer, Vera goes back as a final goodbye, as a way of reconnecting with her mother. When her mother reached out, Vera was so astonished that when she called, she came running. Like, this is her mom, despite how difficult the relationship has always been. Now, as Vera comes back, there's another player here. It's not just her and her mom. You also have this artist that's working within the home because, it's a famous home, infamous serial killer. There's an artist that lives in the shed, and he's creating based off of what he feels from this home with so much history. Now, this book was very difficult for me to read, mostly because you have a very well written out character study and study of a family and unveiling and peeling back of these relationships. I loved getting to see Vera reflect because you have these alternating timelines of Vera's own memories, and I loved getting to see her relationship with her father most off. I do think that was a very interesting thing to kind of peel apart. Despite him being this serial killer, seeing him as a father was actually really well done, I thought. Where this lost me was I wanted it to do more of something. Oh, you're done doing your job? Well, that is all you're getting of my co-host today. But I wanted this book to do more of something. I wanted this book to be something more, because for 75%, I did have this familial drama type of writing. It had that feel of deep reflection, of musing, of reminiscing, of trying to flesh out these relationships. But it was a horror book, and it felt as if the author spent spent so much time with the family and those relationships for 75% that she did everything she could to throw in the horror for the last 25%. Those portions, 75 versus the 25, felt like two completely different books. The actual relationships amongst the family I thought was well done. And then that 25% was actually spooky. However, they just didn't quite gel with each other. It did feel like the horror aspect was forgotten, and then the author was like, oh yeah, I want this to be a scary book. The actual atmosphere of the book I thought was really well done. It did grasp me because I love this haunted sentient home. That's something that I'm gonna fall for every single time. Now, I will say I do think sentient haunted homes are done better in other books. I do think there are other books that do this better. So that's another reason I didn't know quite how to rate this, because it felt like it was doing things that I wanted to be exceptional, but really fell almost below the wayside, while also being things that I loved. Those are all my thoughts about that. I do have some spoilery thoughts, so I'm going to put a frame up around myself. And if you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. If you have already read the book and you kind of want to talk about the ending, stay around. I will also put chapters at the bottom in my description box so that you can tell what are the spoiler sections for what I want to talk about. I think this is the only spoiler section though, so don't worry. Spoilers start now. I actually liked the idea of this one. This home built with her father's love embedded in the bones of it, and that created this dark, seeping creature. The only thing that I didn't quite mesh with was the oily darkness of the mother. Something about that I couldn't quite grasp onto. It really felt like a throwaway of the author to be like, oh yeah, by the way, the mother's sickness was she's a mean lady. Something about that I didn't quite get. The evilness within men, that concept of the oil and grease in people, I didn't feel like that was really thought out. Something about that felt half done. I don't know what it was, because it was a very easy to understand concept, but it just didn't feel quite right. However, again, I did love, like, when the creature came out of the bed, I thought that was written so well. The creepiness of that, the creepiness of it being under the bed was so perfect. But I don't know. The grease didn't sit well with me. So that was I didn't know how to feel about that. Love the monster. I also, again, on audiobook, if you listen to the audiobook, the voice of this creature monster was so creepy and perfect. Also, the sadness I felt when this sentient home monster thing admitted to the mom being dead. I did feel a sadness there, which I thought, like, I never liked the mother. I didn't like how she came off, but this idea that the house was trying to protect her and the house was doing the best it could and the mom was dead. Oh my goodness. I loved that. I also genuinely felt pain that the home was being harmed by this artist. I don't know what it was. It had all the pieces. I don't know what would have pushed it a little bit more forward for me. Maybe a better balance, maybe more scariness woven into the story. But otherwise, I couldn't quite give this more than like a very average to below average rating, but I think it was the balance and the way that it just switched. It didn't have that ebb and flow of you talking about the family, but also making sure that I was scared throughout. I wasn't scared for most of the book because it didn't feel like horror until that last 25%. Not sure. Spoilers done. Next book that I want to talk about is We Lived on the Horizon by Erika Swyler. Now, this is a dystopian science fiction philosophical type of book, which again, very up my alley. I love science fiction that handles these bigger discussions and really gets to the bottom of things that I think need talking about. And this story does follow a bioprosthetic surgeon. She can feel that she's nearing the end of her life. And so she builds this AI that holds on to her knowledge and can then bring forward the knowledge that she has, the learning that she has, and the skill set that she has. So this AI person is her home, though. So the AI system is her home, and then she builds it into a body. That's how that relationship works. But within the story, it becomes this mystery because there is a sainted person, somebody that exists at the hierarchy, the tip of the hierarchical power structure of humans, that has died. And the AI system, that is the city, is covering up that murder. There are a few pieces that I like in theory about this book. For example, there is this symbol of a body martyr, somebody who donates parts of their body to be given back to these sainted people, these people with skill sets, these people that are seen as higher, and they donate parts of their own body, and they see themselves as living to donate and living to continue the lives of certain people. And then there is this checks and balances system run by the city, this AI system that is the city, that creates this concept of life debt for some and extends the life of others. And I think that as a concept and as an ethos is very interesting to possibly explore. But where I wanted those topics to be explored, the author didn't. Those really dropped off. The concept of humanity, the concept of this AI didn't quite get fleshed out and discussed or thematically experimented with. They were kind of brought up as an idea and brought up in the narrative as a part of the narrative, but never actually fleshed out and taken forward. There was no why, there was no how about these portions. They were just parts of this cool world building, which I can say the world building, the ethos, really interesting, really well done as an idea. And I think this could have been such a thought-provoking novella. You know how novellas don't quite have the time or the space to really flesh out these ideas. The fact that this was a full-length book and I didn't get these ideas quite touched on was what bothered me. But if this were just shortened and condensed, I think that could have been great because it did feel very repetitive in other sections. For me to not get what I wanted in some sections and to get so repetitive in other sections. Also, so this AI person that our bioprosthetic surgeon has created goes through a lot of internal philosophical musings. And that's how a lot of this philosophy and discussion is brought up, through the musings of this AI. And they really kind of slogged. It really changed the pace for me to be in this intense, beautifully world-built story and then have this long, drawn-out, almost too heavy-handed musing of themes that I didn't care about. And then to not discuss this idea of what do I owe my city? What do I owe my community? What is the checks and balances of what I owe the environment that I live in, the ecosystem that I live in? What do I owe that? I wanted that discussed. It didn't get discussed. World building was cool as an idea, as something to kind of bounce around with. Very cool if you just want to exist within a cool idea. But just a warning, the author doesn't quite take it far enough. Have some opinions. Really get into it. That's what I wanted from this book. But enjoyable nonetheless. Next up, I read Eruption by Michael Crichton, and then finished up by James Patterson. So the way this works out was the author of Jurassic Park had this manuscript for a book that wasn't quite finished, and James Patterson was Crichton's widow, had asked James Patterson to finish up the book. And going into this, I was so confused as to what the genre was. I didn't know how to label this genre. And while I was reading it, I was like, this has the vibes of Jurassic Park, that adventure, high stakes fun kind of. I didn't know how to describe that. So I went into this not knowing that Crichton was Jurassic Park, the author of Jurassic Park, but I can see that it has that energy, just a silly, goofy time. I want to say, this didn't have memorable characters. The writing is not mind-blowing. However, as an audiobook to throw into my ears and go on a hot girl walk, perfect. It was perfect for that. You have government secrets. You have high stakes. You have helicopters exploding, explosions over here. You have press conferences that don't go right. You have people on the whiteboard trying to figure out how to solve things. You have radioactive waste. You have surfing. You have a little bit of a love interest. You have people passing away and losing people that you were rooting for. It was fun. Nothing mind-blowing. But definitely a silly, goofy time. Very much that energy that I get from like Jaws and Jurassic Park. This is labeled a thriller. But when I think thriller, this isn't what I think. It was just adventure, epic adventure. I don't know how to categorize this, but if you want something that just pushes along, that you don't really have to give your undivided attention and thought, something to play while you go on a hot girl walk, a troll stroll, this is it. This is definitely it. I would get like some good steps in. And there are always twists. The chapters are minuscule, but it just kind of like pushes you along. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. Nothing I'm going to write home about, but I'm glad that I had that experience, and it makes me actually want to read Jurassic Park. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. Fun fact about me, Jaws and Jurassic Park are two of my most watched movies. My third most watched movie, The Little Rascals. The Little Rascals is probably my most watched movie. I'm going to be so honest. My mom used to get mad at me as a kid when I would rewatch it over and over. So The Little Rascals, Jurassic Park, Jaws. I love those. I'll put them on in the background right now. Love them. Let's get to my DNF. Destroyer of Light by Jennifer Marie. I don't know. I didn't put the last name because I ran out of space. It's going to be up on the screen. This was a DNF because I do think I personally needed to be a little bit better about hunting down the trigger warnings for this one. Because I find that for some trigger warnings, I think they're going to be referenced. The trigger warnings of this one are written on page. You experience some gruesome scenes on page. And I just couldn't take a grape scene, a youth grape scene written out on page about 20% into the book. I just had to stop it. I didn't. No, not for me. Not something that I personally can read through. But outside of that, this was a retelling of Persephone. So think back to the triggers that come with that story. From what I know, there are way more. I just got to 20% and couldn't take it. I do think there are way more. If you can handle that, the world building of this and the writing of this was beautiful. It was so interesting because you have like some detective twins who communicate with the fourth dimension, and you have them using like synesthesia to communicate. And you also have a child that gets taken into the paramilitary as a child soldier, and she has magical powers. And you also have somebody else with powers who is owned, possessed by a warlord and set free to live as they please. It just has quite a few interesting things. The lore of this really interesting, the world building of this really interesting, the writing beautiful. I personally just had to put it down at the 20% mark because I could not read through that scene. And again, I do think this falls on me because when I see triggers, I'm like, oh, if it's referenced, I can do it. I cannot read it on page though. That is just me. If you have a stronger stomach and you have a stronger resolve than I do think this was such an interesting story, and I do think there are some very important themes brought in. I do think there are some very real world topics handled. I just personally couldn't. Like, child soldiers is such a very real world thing that we see today. I can't personally. It was not something that I could take. I have 2 more books that I would like to talk about. One of them is The Secret to a Southern Wedding. Let me tell you what it's about, then let me tell you how I'm the problem. So you have Dr. Amani Kemp, who races home to Peachtree Cove because she gets an out-of-the-blue notice from her mother that she's getting married. Now, her mom has a horrible past with relationships, and she had a cheating husband, had gone through a divorce, had a horrible situation where the cheating husband's side chick had got it into her idea that if she pews and gets rid of the wife, she'll be able to step into that position, right? So her mom has raised Amani with this, like, you don't need no man. You don't need no man. I mean, I'm independent. Men are awful. Men ruin you. That was really ground into Amani's brain as a child. And her mom had always said she would never do it again. So for this out of the blue marriage to be happening really throws Amani off. On top of that, Amani had no idea her mom was even dating. And then when she talks to her mom said that she had been talking to this guy for 3 months. So Amani's really not on board for this. Not on board for it at all. She gets home and her mom's like, hey, just try to be happy for me. And Amani said, I'm going to do my background checks. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to look into this guy. Well, the groom-to-be has a son. And the son is very much of the, I want my dad to be happy. And he's not really on board with the fact that Amani is not for this marriage. And he's just like, my dad also has a very troubled past and would really like to find joy. And I never thought he would find a person again. Now the dad's passed. The wife had been horribly murdered. And being the husband, he was one of the first people that the police thought it was. It wasn't him, but that is kind of darkened his past, which is why the son and the dad had come to Peachtree Cove as like a fresh start, a start over, you know? Anyways, the romance is between Amani and the groom's son. His name is Cyril. Let me give the positives and then let me give my big negative. You get small town, you get the healing of trauma, you get the patience of a man wanting a woman to heal from trauma, you get understanding, you get communication. It's great. It's cute. Our love interest wore fedoras, and the amount of times his fedora was brought up killed my lady boner. I could not root for this romance because it'd be like, oh, he was at the bar because he owned a bar and his fedora was covering his eyes. Oh, he took his fedora off. Oh, I saw him across the way with a fedora. I could not take the fedora. I don't know what it is. The fact that it was referenced so much, I could not be on board for this relationship. And then even when they would have like spice and sexy time and the tension would be building, fedora guy was not doing it for me based purely on his fedora. I couldn't get into the banter. It took me so out of the story, which is so random. I would have preferred if they said like he had a hat. The fact that the author was so committed to this fedora, I could not get past. They lived happily ever after and it was fantastic. I don't care. Someone change the fedora. If that wasn't there, I really think I could have locked in and had a good time. But I couldn't. I was so like, ew. Even when like he's first brought up, it's like, oh, I saw him across the bar. Fedora pulled over his dark chocolate eyes. I was like, that's the decision we're making? I felt like a barren desert. Not to tell you my business, I was barren Sahara when the fedora was brought up for the 3rd time. And this is kind of like a slow burn. These people don't kiss until, I would say, I think it was around like the 60% mark, which is where like the heat starts building. And I didn't care. I couldn't deal with it. I just wanted the book to end. I'm traumatized. one more book for you. I have one more book. But just hear me out. This one almost made it to my favorites. It almost did, only because gay. Gotta be honest. I've gotta be honest with you. Gay. Hear me out. This is Angels Before Man. I listened to it on audiobook. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But this is the fall of Lucifer, but make Lucifer cute, soft twink. Oh my goodness. Obsessed. Love. Yes. But it's like him and Michael, this super strong angel. And Lucifer has such a shyness and insecurity and questioning to him. The writing of this is extremely purple. It's a very purple writing experience, very purple reading experience. There's a lot of risk, I would say, taken when you want to write gods and angels. And I think there's a lot that an author does when that's a topic that he wants to take in. So I love the creative aspect of how God was portrayed. I also thought it was interesting giving so much of a humanity to these angels. I thought the way friendship was written, the way envy, jealousy, the way love, yearning was written for these angels, the way connection was written for these angels, I did think that was interesting. Now, there are a lot of poor reviews for this. And I think my more positive experience came because I did listen to it. And the narrator had such a shyness that I think did so perfectly for Lucifer's character. Like getting that trepidation in the voice of my narrator, chef's kiss. I needed that. I needed to feel the shyness and the insecurity, the like hitches in the voice, the tentative way of speaking, the fear, the crying. That Lucifer was constantly crying. The like gentle anger, the gentle anger spurred by insecurity, the shy yearning, the idolatry almost of Michael. I thought that was so well done, but I got those feelings from the way the narrator emoted. I do think I would have enjoyed it less if I read it, because you can't read that shyness quite. I don't know if the words themselves would have done that for me. I think experiencing that soft boy that was Lucifer was so fun. Also knowing the fall. I have read Paradise Lost so many times. That is one of my favorite books. I have annotated that book. So getting a soft Lucifer was so much fun. Getting these musings, getting these questions. Also the way God is portrayed was really interesting to me as the father and Lucifer's interactions with God. And I don't want to give too much away. It is very purple. I do think reading it would have been an unenjoyable experience. I'm not sure I didn't do it. But I can see how I would have enjoyed it less if I didn't get this trepidatious, soft-spoken narrator. Soft-spoken even to where like usually the volume that I listened to, I had to turn it up a little bit because he was so gentle in how he told the story and how he spoke. And I felt so much for this Lucifer. And gay. Like the fall of Lucifer, but make it a soft boy gay love. Loved that. I think, I don't know. There were moments where the story did feel like it was slogging by, but again, the prose of it, the languidity of the way that the sentences themselves were worded, it isn't a story that is meant to go fast, and it is quite long. So I can also see how the length of it would act as in disappointment, how that would be hard to have to get through. I had fun though. something I'm glad I listened to. It did take me a long time, and I wasn't necessarily, you know how when you have an audiobook and you need to make time and you need to sit with it. I didn't feel that. It was something that I kind of like chipped slowly away at. I didn't play it. I usually listen at 2 times speed. I listened to this one at 1.75. It was just a different experience, and I think it was what I wanted at the time that I read it. However, I had books that I liked more. The only reason it didn't make it into my favorites this month. Otherwise, I think it would have. You have to be in the right mood for it, though. Take a nibble, take a taste, do a little bit of a listen. Do not read it. I would say listen to this one if you're looking for a long, kind of slow, cutesy softboi MLM, if that's what you want. It's what I want. All the time. 5 stars. No, I think I gave this one on Goodreads. I think I gave this one around 3.5, 4. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with the star system. But those are the books that I wanted to catch you up on. A little bit of tidying up my month. I'm about to go return some books to the library. I'm about to go take some stuff back. And I will be filming my monthly favorites in the next couple of days. So I will see you on Saturday for what is my favorite video to film every month, reflecting on my top, I think it's 6. I'll see you on Saturday for that. I'm excited. I haven't filmed it yet. I am in the middle of a book right this second. I'm not going to tell you what it is. If you follow me on Goodreads, you know what it is. My Goodreads is so chaotic, but if you follow me on Goodreads, you know what it is. I'm in the middle of a book that I am loving right now, and I think I'm going to finish that tonight. That's just the only reason I'm pushing filming my favorites off as long as I can, because I think I'm in the middle of one that's going to make the cut. Because I've laughed out loud to this book, and I didn't think I would. That's enough of that. I'm getting off topic. Thank you for hanging out. Those are the few things that I've been reading. My recent reads, filling in some of the gaps. And I hope your reading is also going well. I hope you have had a good reading month. My reading month was definitely so much better than my last month. February really looked up. It was such a short month, but I still really crushed through some books. I hope you are as well, and I will talk to you next time.